Henri had not been bluffing when he threatened Jeanne with the death of little Louise. The child was indeed in the hands of a man. That man was genuinely watching for the signal, and he had accepted that, should Henri his master give it, he was to plunge his dagger into the poor little creature's throat. His name was Pardaillan, or more properly, the Chevalier de Pardaillan. He came of an old family of Armagnac, which, in the 13th century, acquired the lordship of Gondring near Condom. In time, the family divided into two branches. The elder branch furnished history with several distinguished names. Among its descendants was the celebrated Madame de Montespan, while the Duc d'Antin, whose name survives in a quarter of Paris, also sprang from it. Another offshoot became connected with the house of Comminges. The second branch remained obscure and poor. We can do nothing about its poverty, but as for its obscurity, we hope that by the time we have told the strange, fabulous, and extraordinary life of the remarkable hero who will soon enter this story, our readers will find that obscurity considerably diminished. The Chevalier de Pardaillan was a man of about 40, an old soldier hardened beneath the harness of war, one of those wandering men-at-arms who knew every road in France and the neighboring countries, and who were always ready to sell their sword to the latest and highest bidder. During the Constable de Montmorency's great campaign in Armagnac, he had found Pardaillan near Lectoure, penniless and almost a beggar. The constable took him into his service, quickly discovered that he possessed a nearly invincible sword-arm, and eventually attached him to his son Henri. When the constable left for his campaign in Artois and François de Montmorency rode for Terouanne, Pardaillan remained at the manor beside Henri. During the year that followed, perhaps foreseeing that he might one day require absolute devotion, Henri set himself to winning the old soldier completely. He gave him money, favors, and every mark of confidence likely to touch a veteran of fortune. In time, Pardaillan became wholly his creature. He would have gone to the gallows for his master, and seemed to ask nothing better than an opportunity to die for him. Then one day the old chevalier heard the news that had spread throughout the manor. Monseigneur François de Montmorency was returning. 2 mornings later, Henri, pale, sombre, and feverishly agitated, took Pardaillan to Margency. He showed him the old nurse's cottage and ordered him to abduct Louise. An hour later, Pardaillan returned to the place where his master awaited him, carrying the poor little child in his arms. Henri then gave him his instructions. Pardaillan listened with a grimace, and while speaking, Henri slipped into his hand a ring set with a magnificent diamond, the price agreed upon for the horrible murder that might be required of him. Henri entered the cottage and waited for Jeanne to return. What followed there between Jeanne, François, and himself has already been told. Pardaillan saw François approaching along the road. Holding the sleeping child in his arms, he kept his eyes fixed upon the window and waited for the signal. He was somewhat pale, and there was something dreadful in the sight of that hardened soldier standing ready, at least in appearance, to murder an infant at a gesture from his master. When François finally came out of the cottage, followed shortly afterward by Henri, Pardaillan drew a deep breath of relief. There would be no signal now. Had anyone been close enough to hear him, they would have caught the old soldier muttering to himself,
"It is just as well he did not give it.
I should have had to disobey him, run for my life, and begin my old wandering existence all over again, with the vengeance of a Montmorency at my heels. I am too old for that now, and too tired. Come, mademoiselle, let us see a smile. As for the rest, I can obey well enough. There can be no great harm in keeping this little thing for a month or two, as I was ordered." Very gently, the old soldier wrapped Louise in a fold of his cloak and carried her away. At the foot of the great tower of the manor stood a low house, and into this he went. A little boy of 4 or 5 ran toward him with outstretched arms. "Jeanne, my son," said Pardaillan, "I have brought you a little sister."
Then, turning to a peasant woman seated at her spinning wheel, he added, "Matherine, here is a little girl who will need milk, and not a word about her to a living soul."
The servant swore that she would be silent as the grave. took the lovely little creature into her arms, and immediately began attending to her. The boy, meanwhile, stared with great bright eyes full of mischief and intelligence. He was splendidly built, and every movement betrayed both the strength of a young wolf and the suppleness of a young cat. This was the old adventurer's son, whom Pardaillan, though he himself lived at the manor, had placed in the cottage to be raised, and whom he visited every day. Where had Pardaillan found this son? What lady, in some hour of gallantry, had given him the child? It was a mystery upon which he never spoke. He drew Jeanne onto his knees, and a flame of tenderness lit his grey eyes. But the boy, with a determined movement, wriggled free of his father's embrace, slid to the floor, ran to the little bed where Mathurin had laid Louise, and gathered the frail child into his sturdy arms.
"Oh, father, look at her! What a pretty little sister!"
Pardaillan rose abruptly, narrowing his eyes as he went outside. He was thinking of the child's mother and of what his own despair would be if his Jeanne were suddenly taken from him. An hour later he was back at Margency, sometimes slipping along the hedges, sometimes crawling on the ground. He approached the cottage window and looked inside. He heard Jeanne when she awakened. He heard the lamentations of the deserted wife, her fits of rage and moments of madness, when she cursed herself for having remained silent and declared that she would run after Francois and tell him everything. Each time, however, the thought of Louise with a dagger at her throat stopped her. Again and again the unhappy woman moaned.
"But I obeyed him. I kept silent. I destroyed myself for him. He promised to return my daughter. He swore it, did he not? He will give her back to me, won't he? Louise, where are you?"
As Pardaillan listened to those cries of human despair, his teeth began to chatter. He remained rooted to the spot, horrified by what he had done, until at last he drew back quietly, then more quickly, and finally broke into a run like a man possessed. Night had fallen by the time he reached Mathurin's cottage. The woman pointed toward the bed where Louise slept beside Jeanne. The little boy had one arm beneath her head, supporting it with the unconscious tenderness of a child, while the baby slept beside him in complete trust. Pardaillan bent over them and carefully lifted Louise so as not to wake her. He wrapped her securely and went toward the door, but before leaving he turned back to Mathurin.
"Wake John and dress him, prepare him for a long journey, and have everything ready within the hour. Then go and tell my servant to bring my horse here, saddled, with my travelling bag."
Leaving the astonished woman behind him, Pardaillan set out once more for Margency, with Jeanne's daughter in his arms. Jeanne, exhausted by the terrible violence of her grief, sat half-conscious in an armchair, her mind empty, feverish words wandering across her lips. The old nurse wept beside her and cooled her forehead with wet cloths.
"Come, child,"
the old woman pleaded.
"you must lie down. Come, my poor dear girl."
"Louise,
Jeanne murmured.
Louise."
At that instant, a tall shadow appeared in the doorway. Jeanne sprang up and with a frantic movement tore from the stranger's arms the bundle he carried. She snatched it away almost like a thief, laid it upon the chair, and fell to her knees beside it. Without a word and without a tear, scarcely even thinking to kiss her daughter, she began with trembling but instinctively skillful hands to undress the child as quickly as she could.
"If only they have not hurt you,"
she kept muttering.
"If only no one has hurt you. Let me see, my darling, let me see."
In a moment the child lay naked before her, delighted as babies are to wave her arms and legs freely, her little body fresh and rosy. Jeanne seized her almost greedily, examining and touching her everywhere, devouring her with her eyes from the hair upon her head to the nails of her tiny toes. Then she covered Lois with frantic kisses, upon the shoulders, the mouth, the eyes, wherever her lips could reach, upon the dimples of her elbows, her hands, her feet, upon every part of her beloved child. Pardaillan stood watching. Suddenly Jeanne turned toward him. Still on her knees, she dragged herself across the floor, seized his hands, and began kissing them.
"Madame, madame,"
cried Pardaillan, trying to draw back.
"Yes, I will kiss your hands,"
she said.
You brought my daughter back to me, and I have the right to kiss the hands that carried her. Who are you? Tell me your name, so that I may bless it for the rest of my life.
Pardaillan made an effort to free himself.
My name is of no importance, madame. I am an old soldier, here today and elsewhere tomorrow.
You will not tell me your name, then. You will not even let me know whom I must bless.
Forgive me, madame, but what good would it do?
Then tell me the other man's name.
Pardaillan looked at her.
The man who took the child.
Yes, you know him. Tell me the name of the wretch who agreed to murder my daughter.
You want me to tell you his name?
Yes, tell me, so that I may curse it forever.
Pardaillan hesitated. For a moment he searched his mind for any name he might give her, but then a deeper thought rose from the darkness of his conscience, born partly of remorse and partly of a sudden desire to redeem what he had done. He grew slightly pale before answering.
His name,
He said.
is the Chevalier de Pardaillan.